This conversation is powered by Google Illuminate. Check out illuminate.google.com for more. Today's discussion centers around a fascinating paper titled Regulatory Markets, the Future of AI Governance. It proposes a radical shift in how we regulate artificial intelligence, moving away from traditional methods. What initially drew you to this paper?
The core problem it addresses, the mismatch between the speed of AI development and the glacial pace of traditional regulation. Governments simply lack the specialized technical knowledge to effectively regulate this rapidly evolving field.
Exactly. And the paper suggests a solution that leverages market forces rather than relying solely on government mandates. Intriguing, isn't it?
Absolutely. It proposes regulatory markets where governments set the goals, but private entities compete to provide the regulatory services.
So essentially outsourcing the how of regulation while retaining control over the what. Let's delve deeper into the specifics. Let's start with the fundamental question. Why do we need AI governance in the first place?
Because AI systems, particularly machine learning models, often behave in ways that are unpredictable and difficult to foresee, even for their creators. They're powerful tools, but their complexity creates a significant governance challenge. The potential for harm is substantial, ranging from bias and discrimination to safety issues and large-scale societal disruption.
And this unpredictability stems from the fact that the software itself is often generated by the machine, not solely by human programmers, correct?
Precisely. The model's behavior is a product of both the algorithms and the massive data sets it's trained on. This creates a gap between the designer's intent and the system's actual behavior, making it hard to anticipate and mitigate risks. We're not just dealing with predictable mechanical systems anymore, right?
So the paper argues that existing governance models are falling short. Let's examine those. The paper highlights two main approaches currently employed globally: the EU's comprehensive legislative approach and the more hands-off approach favored by the US and UK. Can you summarize the strengths and weaknesses of each?
The EU's AI Act attempts a comprehensive, risk-based approach, categorizing AI systems by their potential harm and imposing varying levels of regulation. While ambitious, it faces challenges in adapting to the rapid pace of AI development and the inherent ambiguity in risk assessment. The risk-based categorization itself may be too simplistic for the complex reality of AI systems.
I see. And the US and UK approaches?
The US and UK have opted for a more decentralized approach, relying on existing sectoral regulators and voluntary standards. This prioritizes innovation but risks insufficient accountability and a lack of coordinated action. The reliance on private standard-setting bodies introduces a democratic deficit, as these bodies are not directly accountable to the public. They are often dominated by industry interests, potentially leading to standards that prioritize industry needs over broader societal concerns.
Both approaches seem to have significant shortcomings. This is where the paper's proposal for regulatory markets comes in. The core of the paper's argument is the concept of regulatory markets. Can you explain this model?
Regulatory markets involve governments setting the desired outcomes for AI regulation, be it metrics-based or principles-based, but allowing private entities to compete to provide the regulatory services. These private regulators would be licensed by the government and would need to demonstrate that their methods achieve the government-defined objectives.
So the government focuses on defining the what, while the market determines the how. This seems to address the technical limitations of direct government regulation.
Exactly. Governments lack the technical expertise to define precise regulatory methods for AI. Regulatory markets leverage the expertise and innovation of the private sector, incentivizing the development of sophisticated regulatory technologies. These technologies could include AI-powered auditing tools, risk assessment systems, and other innovative approaches to ensure compliance.
But how do we ensure that these private regulators don't become captured by the very industries they're supposed to regulate?
That's a crucial point. The paper emphasizes the need for robust government oversight, including rigorous licensing procedures, ongoing monitoring of outcomes, and mechanisms to penalize non-compliance. Competition between multiple licensed regulators is also key to preventing capture and ensuring the integrity of the regulatory process. The government would be regulating a smaller number of regulators rather than a vast number of individual companies.
Right. This model also seems to address the global challenge of AI regulation.
Yes, regulatory markets could operate at a global scale. Multiple private regulators could be licensed by different governments, each with their own outcome requirements. This allows for flexibility and adaptation to diverse national contexts while still providing companies with a more streamlined regulatory environment. Smaller countries could even free ride on the regulatory efforts of larger ones.
A key concern with existing models is the democratic deficit. How does the regulatory markets model address this?
By placing the responsibility for defining regulatory goals firmly in the hands of governments, ensuring that these goals reflect democratic values and priorities. The private regulators are then held accountable for achieving those goals, creating a system that is both technically sophisticated and democratically legitimate. The government sets the standards, and the market provides the means to achieve them.
So it's a balance between efficiency and accountability. The paper provides several examples of how regulatory technologies could function within this model. Could you elaborate on a couple?
Certainly, in the self-driving car industry, a private regulator might use machine learning to analyze vehicle data and identify risky driving behaviors, requiring the companies to address these issues. In banking, a regulator might use differential privacy techniques to protect customer data while still allowing banks to develop new products. The key is that these regulatory technologies are developed and deployed by the private sector, incentivized by competition and the need to meet government-defined outcomes.
This sounds like a significant shift in how we think about regulation. The paper acknowledges potential limitations and risks. What are some of the key concerns?
Um, the risk of regulatory capture is a major concern. Governments must be vigilant in their oversight of private regulators, ensuring they remain independent and accountable. There's also the risk of insufficient competition in the regulatory market, potentially leading to monopolies or oligopolies. Finally, governments themselves could underinvest in oversight, undermining the entire system. The success of this model hinges on government's commitment to robust oversight and enforcement.
So it's not a silver bullet, but a potentially powerful tool. The paper also discusses the opportunities presented by regulatory markets, particularly in addressing the challenges of globalization and regulatory disruption.
Regulatory markets offer a more flexible and adaptable approach to global AI regulation than traditional harmonization efforts. Different countries can set their own outcome goals, while companies can choose regulators that meet their needs, gaining access to multiple jurisdictions. This reduces the burden on companies while still allowing countries to maintain their regulatory sovereignty. Furthermore, it incentivizes innovation in regulatory technologies, helping us adapt to the disruptive nature of AI across various sectors.
It seems to offer a path towards a more agile and responsive regulatory system. How does this regulatory markets model compare to other new governance approaches, such as performance-based regulation and management-based regulation?
Regulatory markets build upon the principles of performance-based regulation by focusing on outcomes rather than specific methods. However, unlike performance-based regulation, it doesn't leave the development of regulatory methods entirely to the regulated entities. It also goes beyond management-based regulation by creating a competitive market for regulatory services, incentivizing innovation and accountability. It's a more sophisticated and robust approach that combines the strengths of both while mitigating their weaknesses.
It seems to be a more nuanced and comprehensive approach. The paper concludes with a strong emphasis on the urgency of adopting new AI governance models. Why is this so critical?
Because AI is rapidly transforming our societies and economies, and existing regulatory frameworks are simply not equipped to handle this pace of change. The risks are too significant to ignore, and the potential for harm is too great to rely on voluntary measures or overly simplistic risk-based approaches. Regulatory markets offer a more robust and adaptable solution, but their success depends on governments acting swiftly and decisively.
It's a call for proactive rather than reactive regulation. To summarize, the paper advocates for regulatory markets as a crucial addition to the AI governance toolkit. It argues that this model can address both the technical and democratic deficits of existing approaches, fostering innovation while ensuring accountability. What are your final thoughts on the feasibility and potential impact of this proposal?
While challenges remain, particularly regarding oversight and preventing regulatory capture, the potential benefits of regulatory markets are substantial. It offers a more agile, adaptable, and democratically legitimate approach to governing AI, which is crucial given the technology's rapid evolution and pervasive impact. It's a bold proposal, but one that deserves serious consideration given the urgency of the AI governance challenge. The key is to design the regulatory framework carefully to ensure competition, independence, and effective oversight.
That was a great discussion. Thank you for sharing your insights.